All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of the Perceptive Podcast here on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. I am Josh Beiser, and we have another indie developer interview lined up for our show. My guests are the husband and wife team behind the indie game studio Pixel Play, and they are here to talk about their studio, being indie developers, and of course, any other topics that pop up. So, please welcome to the cast, Andy and Valerie. How are the two of you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yep,
We're
we
good.
we had some audio issues before, but I think we have them at least taken care of for now. But again, you never know when it comes to Discord, and of course, doing things live. But it is great to have the two of you on. We were setting this up a while ago, so it's great to finally get things set up time wise. So hopefully everyone can hear me all right, as well as to the chat. And again, for anyone who has questions, oh hey, Draken, how are you doing? If you have any questions for Andy and Valerie about their games, indie dev, or anything like that, let us know in the chat. Or if you're watching this recorded, be sure to leave a comment there. So, I guess to get the ball rolling, since this is both of your first times on for the cast, could you talk a little bit about who you are, what is your kind of indie dev or game dev background, and what is Studio Pixel Play all about?
I'll let you go, Valerie.
Okay. I'm Valerie Gocher, and this is my husband, Andy. He is he's a wonderful solo indie developer. He's skilled at so many different things, and I'll let him share a little bit more of that. My role is different from his. I'm not a programmer. I'm not an artist. I'm not really a game designer. But I have about 10 years of experience running a nonprofit organization and learned the business side, development, and especially marketing and communication and engagement throughout that time. So that's what I bring to the table here at Pixel Play as far as helping to promote who we are, what we do, and our products. And I've been working with Andy to do that for several months now. It's kind of hard to believe it's already July, but it's already July. So that's my role here at Pixel Play. Andy, over to you.
Yeah, I guess I'm the artist, the marketing person, the game designer. Partly an engineer, but I'm not very good at C# programming. But I've been doing games probably 15, 20 years. It kind of puts a long date on me. I started out not initially in the game world. I did graphic design and branding for restaurants and hotels around the U.S. And decided I needed a break from that. Dressing up and meeting with clients and I thought it was a lot of hours, and I just needed a break. And I was lucky enough to have a neighbor that worked at Paradigm Entertainment, which was owned by Atari, and he was like, we could use skills like yours, on UX UI, and we work on video games. I said, well, that sounds cool. And I told Valerie, I was like, well, I'm gonna do it, but I'm only gonna do it for a year, and then I'm gonna go back. I never turned back. Um, I started there as a UX UI designer on a GameCube, PlayStation 2, and the original Xbox for Mission Impossible on for Atari, and I got my feet wet working on the UX UI and in-game HUD systems back then on that, which I rolled right off of that onto another development, which was Terminator 3 Redemption for Atari. And I think I look back at that. There was a lot of hours. We were behind on a couple of those projects, so there was a lot of crunch time, which a lot of people that are getting into the game industry don't realize the amount of time it takes to build things, especially with a large team on AAA
Mm-hmm.
titles. Um, so I continued. I shipped that title, started working on Stuntman Ignition. So I did a lot of the previs for that, which Atari, they later released. but I left Atari to go to Ensemble Studios, which was owned by Microsoft, and they were the creators of Age of Empires series. And I was the UX UI designer for the HUD systems and the main UI for Halo Wars, RTS. Um, and that was quite a change of pace. I wasn't used to RTSs, and I'd played a lot of them in the past, and I love that kind of game and strategy games, but I didn't fully realize how much goes into building those systems and all your upgrades and all the different elements. And for Halo Wars, it was kind of unique in a lot of ways. It was the first like from the ground up Xbox RTS with the controller in mind. So there was a lot of development that had to go into that and get the systems right. And I created UX UI for the UNSC, which is the main heroes in the Halo world, and then for the Covenant, I made a UX UI system for those, plus in-game reticles and hit point bars and icons. So, I was pretty much the only person who did all that design for that, including like the background videos and working with the designers and different departments and really awesome, talented. Just everyone there was really talented, and that the AAA titles is one thing, but in any game industry veterans that have been in for a while, they know that there's always seems to be layoffs.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, Ensemble is great as that was, Microsoft needed to shift some things, so Ensemble was closed and everyone was laid off, and I helped some of the other break off groups, and then I joined New Toy, which was headed up with two brothers that they had Chess with Friends, and they had just released Words with Friends. It was pretty rough back then, and I became like the head art director on Words with Friends, building that out. And we were also creating one of the first farming games for the iPhone, which was We Rule for NG Moko out of San Francisco. And you know, from Words of Friends, I went to Zynga. We got acquired by Zynga, and then I started up another small indie developer company with another friend of mine called Oh So Shiny, and we released Riff the Robot for iPhone.
Hmm.
And it was featured by Apple, and it was really a unique game. It just didn't have the stickiness that it really needed. So my partner went one direction to work on different games and some Oculus things, and I ended up working at Magic Leap on the ML1, mainly a lot of prototyping devices. This is before they released their product. And, during COVID, I got laid off from that and decided, I looked around at all the options in the market, and I really wanted to get back to video games. So I was like, I'm just going to play around, see where this goes. And, here we are today. That's a quick, short story of,
It
of, it- of my history.
it's funny that you worked for Ensemble because I interviewed Sandy Peterson a few times, who
Yeah.
of course went on to do Cthulhu Wars and his own tabletop. So it's kind of interesting, like how we like 6 degrees of separation, or Kevin Bacon to Ensemble. It's one of the developers I've reached out to.
Yeah, I had a chance, quite a bit. Ensemble it was really a good group of people. I mean, there were a lot of people there, but that's one thing in the larger AAA studios. You'll have a cinematics department, an animation department, concepting department, and then game designers. And Sandy was like, he's really a legend in gaming, and I think he makes board games now.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so he's a truly amazing individual. I came in contact with so many great people at the places I've worked. Graham Devine's another one.
Hmm. I
It's legends of video games. If you follow video game, creation and developers, there's you know I,
yeah.
I I've worked with a lot of amazing talent over my time.
Hmm. One of these days, I would love to talk to Bruce Shelley. I think like he's like the missing piece for me for my Ensemble
Yeah,
Studios interviews.
yeah,
And I don't
The
know.
yeah.
Oh,
the
go ahead.
Dallas area is a real hot spot for gaming, and I even people that are local here, they're surprised with how many different studios and how many really large titles have come out of this area, this whole Dallas Metroplex area, and even north of Dallas, which is kind of where we live. Also, we're not
Hmm.
even in the city proper, but there's a lot of really good talent here. It's not just over in California, perhaps maybe that's the
Hmm.
perception, but we've got a lot of really interesting studios here in the area.
Yeah,
Hmm.
some of the people I worked with at Paradigm Entertainment, which was owned by Atari, they left and went to Infinity Ward. They started up Infinity Ward and worked on the original Call of Duty 4 or Call of Duty, all the Call of Duties until it started splitting off to Treyarch and then a bunch of them went to Respawn. So they started that up where they did Titanfall. So I when I get asked by kids what I do and I say I make video games, I always get that question, well, did you make Call of Duty? And I'm like, no, I didn't, but I know people who worked on it. So, and those guys, I don't always, I see them on social media. I'm not a big active social media person, but they're extremely talented, and I learned a lot. Just everywhere I've been, I've worked with great talent, so it's been a blessing.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think one question that I have for you about doing like UI UX work. That is definitely a topic that I don't think we don't have the time to get too far into it today because I think that could be like a good 2 to 3 hour discussion
Yeah,
easily. But I'm just curious, like since you worked on you said Halo Wars and you of course work with Ensemble, how did like what was like the approach to like UI UX for a strategy game? And the reason why I'm asking is that we've talked about UI UX a lot here on the channel. There are a lot of videos and discussions, and those have always been centered around kind of action based designs, more, reflex driven games. But what was kind of the approach of doing it for an RTS? Because I know I have quite a few strategy fans who will watch these.
yeah, a lot of it. I played a lot of strategy games, so some of that's kind of already a proven thing. But a lot of it was like, come up with an idea and a prototype, and then test it out and play with it and see how it works, and then refine it from there. There's the whole. I don't have. I went to school for communication design, which was more like branding and marketing. And I've always tinkered with things in the computer, and once I got into where I had the tools to put stuff in a world and play with it and assign actions, a lot of it was it wasn't the normal do a wireframe. Of course, I made wireframes, but a lot of it's like get it in the world as fast as possible and start playing with it and see how it works, and then how does it work with other pieces of UX UI, and you start with I like starting out with a working prototype. Um, I've done a lot of the wireframes, and I've used Figma and XD and Sketch. But a lot of times I'll do that stuff to get a rough idea, but I'll try to start prototyping as fast as possible,
Hmm.
because that's when things really start to shape up, and you can adjust it and get user feedback. And it's I think there's a lot to be said for like real world usage over just schematics. Schematics, that a lot of time it looks good on paper, and it proves out some ideas, basically a rough sketch. But once you start playing with it, it kind of takes a life of its own, and that's kind of the approach with Pixel Play. The game that we built it's nothing new, but the core game loop is it's almost like a zigzag game. It is a zigzag game, but I started playing with the fundamentals of what tools do I need to build this and then take it to the next level. Almost like put it on steroids and then pump it up even more and put a lot of eye candy in it, but make sure it runs consistent with a good frame rate on low end devices and high end devices. As my goal with this mobile game, learning from past mistakes, it's like, do something that I can build tools that I can actually make a lot more out of than just one game. Sometimes when you build a game, it's you build that game specifically to build that game and not really think about reusable pieces for the future. And I spent a full year. I have contractors to do a lot of the heavy lifting of the programming that I can't do. But a lot of it's development of tools. So a lot of that goes with the UX UI. I'll put it together and then play with it and play with it. And I'll let some other people play with it and then make adjustments based on usage and feedback. And hopefully it makes a better product in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You can also look at a lot of other UX UI design that's out there because a lot of care is taken into building it, and also there's a lot of people testing, and hopefully everyone gets feedback on it early as possible, to make sure it feels good.
Mm-hmm.
And for the UX UI on Halo Wars, a lot of it came down to, like, because of the way the game is loaded in, especially on Xbox, the map, all the units, all the particles, pretty much everything had to load up into memory. So I had to be very conscious of the amount of textures and animations and draw calls that I was pushing on the Xbox, because number one, it should, it should be responsive and as fast as possible. And that's the number one goal. Everything else is just kind of icing on the cake,
Mm-hmm.
eye candy. Some of the original designs I really wish we had the power to pull off for Halo Wars. Unfortunately, we didn't, but I think it turned out really good, and it's still a game. I see it out there today. People are still playing it, and they made Halo Wars 2, so
Mm-hmm.
it was a good experience. Every game I've worked on, I have really good memories of, and it's a lot of work, a lot of hours, and a lot of if the end product is user happiness, then I think it's worth
Mm-hmm.
it.
So I guess to kind of, I think that's actually a good segue into this question. With Pixel Play, the game itself, that's available on mobile and iOS, how, I guess, has working on mobile affected or changed your thoughts on UI UX, or has it really just been more like a growth of what you kind of started out with doing strategy games and stuff along those lines?
I look at them all the same, actually. Some are just bigger than others. From Halo Wars, I went on to work on. I was art director for Words of Friends for 4 years, 3.5 years. And that had its own. It's a simple game since it's basically a Scrabble type game, but a lot of the actions when you touch the tile, it needed to feel like you were actually touching something under the glass, and it needed to be reactive to how you touch. And you know, for that game, since it was a pass and play, it needed to be really responsive because you don't want people waiting. So the menus were pretty light back then. I know they've been loaded up with more things over time, and I haven't really played the game in years, actually. I see it every once in a while, but a lot of it's just on a mobile, it's make it as light as possible so it can run on low end devices, high end devices, but as snappy as possible. You don't want to lag, and just make it feel like it's a world under the glass that you can connect with.
Mm-hmm. So for my audience, they typically consist of like console and PC gamers, so I don't know if they've had a chance to look at Pixel Play itself. So for people watching us live or recorded, what's kind of like the elevator pitch, or what is Pixel Play the game about?
I'll let Valerie do that one.
Oh, thank you. Um, I think he passed that to me because we had the opportunity in May to go to Pocket Gamer Connects in Seattle. and that became my job. So we were a finalist at the Big Indie Pitch, which was really fun, and very validating. So for any indie developer that's signed on watching right now, or that will watch this recorded, Pocket Gamer has some really cool opportunities for indie devs to pitch their game, not just at the in-person conferences, but also through a digital experience. So anyhow, we've had the chance to do that, and it was well worth it. It's a great experience, good feedback. So bringing back around to what is Pixel Play the game, it's a very simple, colorful, and fun casual arcade. It's a simple tap. There's not a lot of complicated instructions. There's not a lot of complicated moves. It's just one of those great go-to games that you've got to stand in line, or for a few minutes, and you need something to do that's going to be completely stress-free. One of the things that we really wanted to be prominent in it is that the game not be ad dependent, so that you're going to die a whole lot of times in the beginning. Your character, you're going to have a game over screen until you really get used to the tap and the responsiveness and the timing. But once you get it down, you're gonna want to be on those leaderboards and get the highest score possible. It gets pretty addicting pretty fast. But the great thing about it from an engagement perspective is that when you hit that game over screen, you don't have to buy coins. You don't have to watch an ad for 30 seconds to play again. You just play again. You can play again. So we really tried to decrease the amount of noise and make that something about it that's different in the casual space, because the casual space is really crowded. And you asked Andy, well, what's different now about developing a mobile game today versus the mobile game he developed 7 years ago or 15 years ago, and I like the way he answered that from the kind of the background, the behind the scenes view, but from a business and kind of a competitive view. It's a much more crowded place now. There are literally, I think, I don't know, 200 to 300 new games posted on the App Store every day. And that's a lot. That's a lot to compete with. So this game is simple, it's fun, it's colorful, there's a ton of characters, and it's just meant to be that stress-free break from the everyday.
I came out of out of Zynga. Words of Friends was new toy, and we missed a lot of the initial hardships I think that indie developers get. It was basically the right time for that game and pass and play, and the market wasn't really crowded back then. And we had a couple of really good boosters. John Mayer tweeted about it, and that helped like really propel it to the moon. And then more and more people got it playing. Once it hit a critical mass, it just kept going up. So I went to Magic Leap where I worked on development, because it's a headset. It's like a pair of glasses that projects digital images into your real world and does real-time mapping. And part of going into that, it was a new technology, and I wanted to work on something new. It was, I've seen things that I had those moments where it's like, wow, that looks really real, in the room with me, interacting with me. But also it was developmental. I mean, I can't talk about a lot of it, but a lot of it was pre-prototype, and they needed experienced developers who had worked on mobile to figure out how are you going to build things for this, and how do you use all these new methods, and how does the UX UI work in a real world space, and how does it react to hand gestures or eye tracking. So it sounds fun, but development on experimental hardware, it's really hard. And I spent 4 years doing that, and we released a really awesome product. And during COVID, they laid off think 1,000 people, and I just happened to be part of that group. So, I really needed to find what I wanted to do, especially with everything going on in the world. So,
Yep.
um, I like mobile. I've done the console. I've worked with the big teams, and that's fun. But on mobile, I could sit in my own little sandbox and just play and make Tinker Toys once I got the tools working. And Pixel Play was kind of a test bed for the tools because I had released the previous game under Oh So Shiny with a partner called Rip the Robot, which was kind of a pinball pachinko game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we released it. It was very unique, colorful, and it was really pretty. Had awesome audio. It just wasn't sticky, and we couldn't really reuse that. So we
Mm-hmm.
also released it globally, but we didn't have it localized properly. And I could see where there were hitches in that. So hopefully I've learned from a few mistakes. That was you know from the get go. It was prototype tools to make fun things. Find that little bite sized chunk of fun, and then expand on it. And also make sure it was localized so it could reach a global market, which is I think it hopefully that works out. We're yet to see that really. We haven't really pushed it too much. But it's localized for 11 different languages professionally. And I kept it really simple because, I don't want text and words and tutorials to get in the way of people actually playing the game. And, the Pixel Play, it can be a fast paced game, but it also, slows down. So you have moments where, like, oh, I got to get through this, I have to jump or slide. And then it calms down, but then it speeds up when you hit boost or you shrink in size or, get larger. And, I went with a core game loop that was, it's kind of tried and true. I've seen a lot of, similar things out there, kind of like Zigzag, but I wanted more of a party feel to it and very colorful and, kind of retro arcadey because, it dates me, but I grew up in the 80s and I went to roller skating rings and, arcades when I was a kid. And, just going in there, it was like, back then I didn't know it was like Vegas for a kid. It's like all this lights bleeping at you and all these sounds. And then, you play a game and it gets real addictive. But, part of working in mobile is, not only the competition, but there's a lot of games out there that don't seem like they're quality games, but they load you up with ad after ad after ad and banners because if they don't have a retention rate, they want their money up front, which is totally understandable. But that's not my initial goal. My initial goal is to build, hopefully an evergreen game. I love, I still play Pac-Man. That's a favorite, and Nintendo games, Mario Brothers, and it's I like that feel, and I was like with Pixel Play, I want to build my own little arcade of mobile games and just kind of have like an arcade of games that people could play. They're not really niche, but they're not like full in-depth games to lose countless hours like you would on a console title. I love that more than anybody, but I know that that's nothing I can build by myself. And if I was, it would take forever. Um, so these are just small bite-sized games that are just easy to play, but for an average casual user, they should be fun. But for like someone who gets competitive, it can get really competitive to try to beat people's scores.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the highest score until someone else beat it, and I kind of want to give it another go and beat it, but it's there for the players to take over at this point.
I think you'll appreciate this, but our highest score on the leaderboard that beat Andy, his name is also Josh.
Nice.
And he lives out east as well.
Oh man, maybe there's an. I hope that Josh is also into video games and talking about game design.
Yeah, part of the mobile game space too. I've noticed, a lot of games, they build the game, they put the ads in, and they don't go much further than that. They might put meta games in or little mini games, but like, working on the console, achievements were a big part of, that. Some people go for achievement scores. I was there trying to get a high, gamer score and beat my friends. So countless hours playing all kinds of games to get those, 1,000 point, total scores. But in Pixel Play, I put in 5 achievements and, plan those out for the game, it's very rare, I think, in a lot of mobile games. But also, it has the leaderboards. So, I wanted to get this first version out, and then there's an update that should be released very soon that, increases on how much better the game is. And I have an offline mode, so, it's engineered that if you're not online, you're not receiving ads, and it's not really penalizing because you can still play. I think it's a very balanced offline mode that it feels very fair.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I really wanted to, just have a fun environment. I need to run ads to monetize because that's how we make a living. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to be so in your face. So even some of the ad rate, ads is based on your skill level. So it ramps up as you get better, but it's not overly, intrusive. Like, you game over, you get an ad, and then before you play the next round, you get an ad. It's nothing like that.
Mm-hmm. A few questions came in from chat that I want to get to, but one thing that I wanted to kind of like ask both of you about, with regards to the actual like market or the mobile market, like you two have talked about that over the last few minutes. But one thing that I'm curious about, I did my book on the free-to-play market that's coming out next month, and I focus a lot on kind of, I guess what we're looking at, like the current generation of mobile. Like, when did you say a Pixel Play was first released?
Last couple of weeks.
Oh.
It's brand new, and we like Andy mentioned, we've got an update that's in the queue. So we've been somewhat quiet about the release, at least here in the US, until we get that update loaded in. But we'd love to have people playing now just as much.
All right. So my question is that when I look at kind of like the hot trends of mobile today, or at least from what I see from like more on like the core hardcore side of things, we're seeing a lot more in terms of, I would say, more advanced games. We look at stuff like Genshin Impact, Arknight, Azure Lane, the Dragon Ball games. Like, there's definitely been this push over, I would say, like last maybe 6-7 years, I would say, in terms of trying to appeal more to core and hardcore markets compared to the casual space. And for the two of you and with Pixel Play, I just wanted to ask, from like a developer and kind of studio standpoint, like, are there any like new trends in terms of casual games? Because you said that there are tons and tons of casual games still being released on the App Store and on Google, but have there been any, I guess, like growing or new trends in terms of those kinds of games or how they're being marketed today?
I think one of the biggest things is incorporating live ops into casual games. There's a lot of talk about that, about live events and those things being scheduled, and whatever the casual space can do to boost engagement, because that's where it's at, is engagement and retention. We tend to see lots and lots of downloads when a game is released, but and we know it's going to decline a little bit and then hit somewhat of a plateau, and we're all working for that pretty strong plateau. A day 28 retention rate of 10% is pretty phenomenal, and 10% is a very low number. 5% is actually kind of like that, like that's great. You're doing good if you've got 5% retention at day 28. So, again, that's a really small number, to be working really hard to make sure your game has the engagement pieces and really taps into what's what works in the casual space for retention, just to get that 5 and 10% in the long run. Not everybody is going to love your game, and that's kind of the thing with the free space, right? Like, we recycle through those things really quickly, and our attention spans are really, really short. So that's another part of the casual space that, there's got to be some kind of excitement. There's got to be an achievement or a reward or something that's popping at you. The music's got to be sharp. The colors have got to be right. It can't be buggy. That first time you play, it has to be good and right and really grab your attention and make you feel good. It's got to boost your serotonin in your brain and, give you all those feel good things really early on, like in the first minute of play. And if you can't grab somebody's attention really quick and casual and then figure out ways to maintain it, then you're going to be just lost out there in the App Store and the Google Play world.
Yep, and I mean the same I could say about from the hardcore games that I've played, where if I lose my interest for even like a fraction of a second, in like that first week, I just lose a desire to keep playing. And it's something that I've seen with a lot of developers. My friend Ramin, who's been doing this for years now in terms of like studying game economies and monetization, that we've spoken about how like you really have to get somebody invested for, I would say, like 2 weeks at a minimum if you want them to even have the remote chance of spending money or supporting these games. And what you said regarding like live ops and live service, that is definitely like a huge trend. I think not just with the casual and the mobile space, I mean with retail games, that there are tons of developers, and especially on the independent side, that they release a game and the very first question is, okay, what do you have coming next week? Or, when's the next expansion or update? And it is very troublesome, I think, and very difficult. Because some of these games, I mean, for like games that are built on like gotchas or some of the more heavily monetization side, you can keep extending that with a new character or a new map, until like it's like 500 degrees out, the earth explodes from that. But like if you're building like a casual game or a game that's built for, very short bursts, like a game that you don't expect someone to sit and play your game for 10 hours a day. Something that's, a few minutes, maybe, if we're, 10 minutes if we're like waiting for a bus or something, that's a different story.
And I think the average, our average gameplay in kind of that free to play casual space in the genre where we fit the best in, if you've got somebody playing for 5 minutes, then that's really good, and we're okay with that. We've definitely got some folks, and I definitely get sucked into our game, and I'm not. I don't think my husband would have ever described me as a gamer, maybe until now. So but we don't kind of think that way. We don't box our players into like, are they a gamer? Are they not a gamer? Because when you create for the mobile, what's really fun about that is that everybody who has a mobile device is a gamer. And, they've all tried something. They've all, at least they've got an app. There's an app for everything. Why else have a smartphone? Because it can do all these great things for you. But it's your tiny little piece of entertainment that fits in your pocket and goes everywhere you go. So we just think of everybody as a gamer and that has a smartphone. And of course, like, there's some interesting things about demographics too in players. Like there's a big trend upward for women playing games and really liking the casual space too. What's fun about pixel play, in my opinion, that is my favorite thing, which I don't even think we've mentioned yet about the game loop and the core gameplay, is that a new path is generated every time you play, every single time. So you can't possibly memorize the turns and the jumps and all the boosts that Andy mentioned about speeding up, accelerating, slowing down. Your character can get bigger and get smaller. And those things are all randomized. And that's what I really like about it. And that's one of those things that we've featured in thinking, okay, how can we make sure we grab your attention quickly and keep it? And it's all those things that are randomized, because it's completely different every time you play. The way you play it is exactly the same, but it's so randomized to a point that even our friend Josh, who's got over 12,000 points playing this very simple casual runner, you know, he's got to be perfect. He's got to stay right in the center of this runway that he's got, because otherwise those little surprises along the pathway and he's going to come to a rail, you know, if he's really tiny, if his character's really tiny and he comes to a rail, he's going to fall off if he's not perfectly in the center. So a lot of those things you can't predict about it. And that's, for me, that's what makes me really like it, because that's the fun of it, is that you don't really know what's coming around the corner. You don't know if your character is going to be zooming as fast as it can go, and if it's going to be tiny, and that's going to make it harder. You know, that's what I think is fun about it. So, you know, does that make me a gamer, quote, quote?
You know, a lot of it, I wanted like a quick quarter arcade game experience, something that you could play and you might come back to again, you know, and it should be like, and I say it, you know, Pac-Man. You know, as a kid at that time, I had it on the Atari 2600 and it looked terrible, but man, I played it, and you know, it's not that game, but I wanted that same type feel, but make it to have high points and low points. And part of Pixel Play, that's kind of our tagline, is where people in pixels play. We wanted to, you know, make games that are for everyone anywhere. And, you know, that's why we went ahead and got everything ready to localize from the get-go, because, you know, there's a lot of devices out in the world, and it'll run on, you know, as low as an iPhone 6. So, you know, I wanted to cast that net as far and wide to find people who want that kind of experience, you know. And like she said, the game is different every time. So a little bit about the game, there's over 22 different tiles that it spawn in. It's all randomized. And within those tile sets, there are pickups, which are all randomized too. And there are in-game currencies, which, you know, I wanted to keep those kind of light, but there's basically you collect pixels along the path. So there's blue, there's yellow, blue, green, purple, and green is the most rare. So some characters you can buy with in-game currency as you collect those, you know, with the green or the purple or the blue or the yellow. And then there's a couple of characters that are for in-app purchase. So, you know, say you wanted to play totally ad-free, you can still, you know, collect pixels to a point, but a lot of it, you get rewards for getting high scores. So you can collect things that way, or, you know, different type achievements. And you can still, you know, buy characters in the offline mode. You can definitely get a lot more when you're playing online, because you know, the monetization is a little bit different in the online mode, but you're not penalized. So, you know, part of the game is the colors change as you play, and the whole environment changes. So it's really a fun thing. I want it to be appealing to whoever, whether they're, you know, older person or a young kid, just a everyone game. I didn't. I think, you know, learning from other games that I've worked, you know, they were specific. Like the RTS really caters to an RTS crowd. Not everybody wants to get invested in that. Where like, you know, the Terminator game, it was it was kind of an endless runner in some things. It was very linear third-person shooter type game with action moments. So I've played on a lot of different things, and I needed simple and fun, because, you know, it was pretty much just me. I have, you know, a very talented you know, engineer that's helped architect some of the back end along the way. But a lot of it's just a lot of hours of trying this, trying that, and seeing what these tools could do. Because pixel play is just originally it wasn't supposed to be what it is at this point. It was a simple
Mm-hmm.
game to release to test my tools for like devices, and then build the other game that I've got kind of in my head and I've been playing with. So pixel play kind of took a life of its own, and I'm like, well, let's push this even further to see where it goes. So it's definitely it's not your average like zigzag infinite runner, by far. It's full of little action moments, and there's 60 characters that you can acquire. So yeah, hopefully people find it's fun, and the best part about it, it's free. You got nothing to lose. So
All right. As a quick time check, it's about 5:34 my time. So you said that we pretty much have like a soft stop or hard stop in about another like 14, 15 minutes. That works for both of you? Okay.
yeah.
With that said, I want to get to a few questions in chat that came in. And if anyone has any other questions for Andy and Valerie, we'll consider this as last call for them. So this question came in a while ago, but regarding networking, I guess like doing promotional and that kind of thing for Pixel Play. This one I think is for you, Valerie. I guess how has it been in terms of like reaching out or getting in touch with people about Pixel Play? I think this is another very interesting thing about kind of the compare and contrasting with indie developers versus PC versus mobile.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of people put a great deal of stock into that word marketing and networking, and really what you have to think about what you're doing and what your purpose is and selling your product is you're trying to make a connection between what somebody needs and what you've got. And that's really all it is like, well, we've got this, and would that work for you? And and then go from there. But I think that some of the advice that I've given to other indie developers is for networking and marketing and social media and any of the telling of your story and building your website and whatever it is that you're doing to connect with people is definitely don't wait until your game is out there. Don't wait until the link is live and everybody can upload or everybody can demo or whatever. Don't wait until then. Start early, because there are people behind the scenes that are making this, and I think it's important to make those connections. That's what I think engagement is about. But to the other part is like, how hard is that? It is hard. Social media especially is not the way it was 12 years ago when I started a nonprofit. It was a lot easier to get followers. It was easier to get found without paying for that space. And, you can boost and you can run ads on all of these channels, and it can get very expensive. It's interesting things to play around with. If you've got a little bit of budget, you've got, carve out a little bit here and there and watch some videos and tutorials and learn the ins and outs of marketing on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all those things. But, find those channels that work for you and put a lot of time into what is working. For us, what I think is maybe somewhat surprising is that we have kind of our largest following is on LinkedIn. And I know it seems kind of unusual, but honestly, I kind of think it's because we're old, old, and we've been around for a while. And he's been in the video game space for over 15 years at this point. And I'm running a business and doing a lot of fund development and fundraising and constantly asking people for help, asking people to fill a need for my organization. It was very, very critical that I network and that I connect all the time. And I remember kind of having a little celebration in my own head When I got over 500 LinkedIn connections, I was like, oh, I finally got that. That number is going to go away. The count number is going to go away now, like 500 plus. And we've really used that LinkedIn environment to put content on there that really has nothing to do with our game. It just has to do with the industry or with bringing fun into your work environment, or articles that we think are interesting that we're like, hey, did you guys, know that Brad Pitt said he'd like to retire and just play old Nintendo games? Like, that was an article I put on LinkedIn not too long ago. So, again, it just kind of, I would just say, find those channels. It might be Discord. I think that's really popular for a lot of indie developers.
Mm-hmm.
And, Twitch and streaming and all that kind of thing. Find what really works for you, where you feel like you're making a connection to others, and really spend a lot of time there.
I would add to that really get your product, into a state. Don't start marketing too early, because I've known people in the past who have, put a lot of effort into developer diaries and a lot of work into just talking about the game that's coming, and they might get some excitement in the beginning, but by inevitably games ship later than what you think they're gonna, ship, and you'll have issues along the way. So don't start too early, but don't wait till the last minute. At least start getting your channels going, because it's not good if you get a bunch of hype built and then it doesn't happen, when you expect it to.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it too, really, I'm a firm believer, if you focus on making an appealing product that's good, it should be able to grow organically, in some aspects. I with Pixel Play, our games, I don't want to make anything that's real, specific niche based. Just kind of fun games to tinker with, but still like a full game experience. So, my approach is kind of different, and I'm targeting everyone. So, if it doesn't work here, there might be, somewhere else in the world that people just love it. Or, I hope to have, just happy people. But yeah, don't start too early, but don't start too late. And, since I've been pretty much a team of one, a lot of the website I built, I do the videos.
Mm-hmm.
A lot for the game. Just doing the game itself is a monumental task, and people don't realize when you tell them you're in games. And somebody had asked a question in the chat about, what have the biggest takeaway from my experience, good or bad, a persistent lesson. You really have to love doing this to do it, and to go on your own. A lot of people, they might do it once, and unfortunately, it didn't succeed that time for me. And I'm doing it again, but this is what I do. It's work, but it doesn't feel like work. Sometimes it does feel like work, especially when you can't figure out why something's not working. But there's other times when you see like, oh yeah, that was awesome. I played and I did this, and whatever I'm making, and that's good. I hope people can see that and experience that too, and I hope they get the same. Puts a smile on somebody's face. And it's kind of a joke I like to talk about, but like, there's some games that's kind of a hidden joke. It's the poop game. Like when you go to the bathroom and you need, to play something, like this fills that time gap really. You can sit down, play a couple games, and then go on with your day. So I'm not saying that it's that kind of game, but that's the reality of some of the games. I think on at least mobile, because people, that's the time when they sit there and they browse the internet, or look at social. And I don't get on social media all that much. I was on it probably 5 years ago, but I've just kind of focused on other things, and I don't play a lot of the console games like I used to, just because I'm either working on, this game, or, making a video, or, trying to do something else, experimenting with some of these tools. Because like, what can I build next? That's what I'm looking at. But there's also, I have a lot of ideas for new things I can put in this game to just make it, that much better, and then just keep adding to it. Because, I'd really like to have evergreen games that, stay alive, have longevity.
Mm-hmm. And let me see. I know we have to wrap things up in the next few minutes. I'm trying to think if there's any like last minute quick questions. Um. So with kind of, I guess, as we were saying earlier regarding live ops and thinking beyond, with Pixel Play, again, the game is coming out in like a few weeks. I think you said in a few days or a few weeks at the time of this recording. So how are you approaching that with Pixel Play? Like, have you come up with ideas for the future, or do you see this as more of a once it's out, it's kind of done kind of approach?
No, it's I we had it out. We had a bunch of play testers playing, and we got, we're definitely, looking at data and taking feedback to make it a better game. Because in the end, I'd rather have a good product, than just push something out and then move on to the next thing. And that's, I really take pride in like trying to make things have as much motion, animations in them or particles to make it kind of feel alive. And there's a lot of, I spent a year building the engine part, and then the better part of a year getting, the game to where it is now, and still working on the engine and buttoning up things. So I've experimented with a lot of things, and I have a lot of, my tools are pretty solid now, so I can try things faster. And there's plans for more characters and some events and new types of, fun things to do in the game. So, you can slide, you can jump, you can go across rails and do rail spins. And it's different because there's magic mushrooms that make you grow big and, grow small. And that changes the dynamics. So if you're small and you try to jump a gap, it's harder than being large, because if you're boosted in large, you can just slide over the gap. Or if you're small and you need to slide, there's certain places where if you're small, you don't have to press an action to, flatten down pancake size to slide under things. So there's some things in there that, you can learn once you play it enough. And I've got more tricks up my sleeve for new things that are coming to help expand on it. And there's 60 characters, so there's a lot more characters that I know that need to be made, and I want to make, and add things to the characters, so to help just bring more life to the game. So, but there's also a game too that's going to be hot on its heels. And that's one thing I'd tell indie developers: your first game is going to be your hardest one, and setting up your company,
Mm-hmm.
and going through any of the legal things, and trademarking. um, I've tried to do it. I've done it by myself in the past, but with this go, it's just, I did it more the correct way. And I actually had to bite down and really get a lawyer to help me set up a lot of the stuff, because you know things like Pixel Play itself, the name Pixel Play is kind of, I knew that was beyond my level to figure out how all that was going to work to get trademarked. Um, so really invest in your company just as much as your game. Um, and I did that mainly because this is what I'm meant to do. I love making games. And I unfortunately I stay up all night, and I tinker with things and play with things and create new things all the time. And I still have to step away and find time to have a balanced work life. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I've learned from being in games a long time. You really need to have a good perspective on a balance, because games, they're not easy to build. They may look like easy once you're done, but there's a lot of hours, a lot of headache, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. but it's worth it once you have people play it, and you can see like other people's reactions. So build a game that's for you, but you also have to remember that you know there's a lot of people out there. So try to really shoot for a more general audience. That way you can get hopefully grow a bigger audience. And as you release your second game, it'll become easier, especially if you've built like tools for prototyping, and
Yeah.
it just makes things easier. And then you'll grow your audience, and they'll recognize you.
And that kind of long-term growth is something that is very important, and that's for any developers listening to us right now. That is a very major point, and it's something that I've spoken to a lot of other developers about. And it's that challenge again of it's not just about your one game; it's about what is your studio going to be doing 3 years, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And if you're not really thinking or preparing yourself for that, it's oftentimes where I see a lot of indie developers who tend to burn out, or they can't go on because again there's no money coming in, and if you don't have money coming in, you're not able to keep developing games.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's the second time that I've done this. The first one, it didn't quite work out, but I learned lessons. But also, these both have been self-funded, so you really have to think of more than about just that one game, like reuse and really invest in your tools to make things easier. And I know a lot of indie developers, it's easy to make one game just to be that game, but to put systems in place where you can create new stuff out of it, and things like localization. It's good to spend time to invest in that in the front, and with ad space, and there's a lot of legal stuff too. So you have to be prepared for that. And like anything, it's building an airplane while you're flying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, since I know the two of you have to get going in the next minute or two, I just have a few kind of wrap up questions, and then we will say goodnight. So, I guess the first one is, so what is the official date for when Pixel Play is launching? Oh, I can't hear you, Valerie.
Woo!
Oh, there you go.
Okay.
Okay, there you
Am I
go.
back?
Yep.
All right. It's live right now. It's on the App Store for iOS, and we'll have it on Google Play very, very soon.
And we have an update that is getting some testing done, and then it'll be out. And it actually incorporates a lot of feedback from players that we've had. So it brings it up to where it really should be, and it'll just get better from there. It's we plan on supporting the product.
Mm-hmm. And I hate to ask this question, but it just popped into my head. Is there a difference as a mobile developer starting on the App Store or starting on Google Play? Or is like a marketing difference or like a decision difference between which one you start with?
I from early on, the words of friends, we developed on iOS first, and then I built the one. I guess it was for the launch of the Honeycomb. I was out in California at Google getting that one ready. Which today it's a lot easier to build on both devices. But I have an iPhone, and that's what I carry in my pocket every day. So it just made more sense to put it on that first. I've got it on both devices, and I've played on both devices. But since it's a small team, it's me full time, she's full time. But she handles the social media and marketing and connecting with people. There's only so much I can do, and focusing on two at one time to get ready for a simultaneous launch is just it's really difficult. Just one's difficult enough. And then I've got two contract programmers that are tremendous in helping getting everything ready. But with basically a one full time person and some contracting, it's more of a manpower thing. As we grow, hopefully we can simultaneously have someone working constantly on iOS and improving that, and then improving the Android builds. But as far as building, I would say they're about on par in some aspects. There's differences,
Mm-hmm.
but I have an iPhone in my pocket. That's what I carry every day. So it's like my mobile test unit, and you
Okay.
know, yeah, that it made more sense to focus on that one first. You know, it shouldn't have priority one over the other, but I was mainly developing on an iPhone 6, which is really old as far as hardware, but I wanted to make sure it ran really smooth on that because there's a lot of those devices still in use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I've learned too. It's a lot of developers, they want to build on the latest and greatest, and sometimes that isn't the best choice for what market you're going for. You can still make fun things on older devices. I still play like a lot of the old retro games, and I'll bust out the 2600 or the original Nintendo from time to time and play those. They're as much fun as some of these ultra realistic games. There's a market for those, and I enjoy those too. But you know, like I said, Pixel Play is kind of I want the old school bite sized fun, you know, arcade playhouse, and I want to make a lot of those games that other people can enjoy.
All right.
And it's our tagline, where people and pixels play. It means that's we're totally for that.
All right. And do you have any social media you would like to promote or where people can find you?
Yes. So essentially, my Discord channel right here, Pixel Play, all of our channels add the HQ to that. So we're at Pixel Play HQ. And of course, you can get to all of our channels directly through the website too, which is very easy, pixelplay.com.
All right.
It's kind of confusing at times. The company is Pixel Play, and then the game is PXL Play, and you can also get to the game through pxlplay.com. But when I talk to some people, like the game is Pixel Play, well, what's your company name? Well, it's Pixel Play. It gets confusing, but for our first title, it just kind of ended up that way, and it kind of fit because the characters are little cubes and they're pixels, and and in all those game studios, I always felt like I was just a pixel on the screen, helping to make the bigger picture. So.
All right. And do you have any final thoughts, anything you'd like to share before we wrap things up for the episode?
Download the game. It's free, and tell us what you think. And we're always looking to add to it and make it a better playing experience for everyone.
All right. And hopefully the other Josh is watching this and is preparing to get a higher score.
Yeah.
I'm going to check with him to see. Not for sure.
Yeah.
Tell him that we were talking about him.
All right. So I know both of you have to get going, so we will wrap things up for our chat. It has been a pleasure meeting with you, and definitely best of luck with the release of Pixel Play, as well as what your next project will be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so for the folks watching us live or recorded, thank you for tuning in. You'll find links to the game and so on down the description. As always, if you are a developer working on a project or just want to talk game dev with me and would like to come on, please get in touch. I am always looking for guests. Do the liking, subscribing, and commenting. There are links to my stuff and up there in the overlay. Let's see. Play games. Quick question from Johnny in chat. Pixel Play can run on any smartphone, is that right?
It can run on iPhone 6 and up on iOS, Apple devices, and we're still determining minimum requirements. I know it'll run on a Pixel XL Android phone, and the Android version should be coming out in the near future.
All right. So, with that said, I will be back later for my regular game streams, and as always, for everyone watching, be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design here and on game wisdom, where is in the art and science of games. It's going to be on both the App Store and on Android to Johnny's question in chat. But I'll include links to the websites and all that for the recorded version, so be sure to check that out. So, everyone, have a great rest of your night, and we will see everyone next time for another discussion. And Andy and Valerie, again, thanks for coming on, and have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.